When I give student critiques over on Patreon, this is the number one thing that I assign people to work on, meaning chances are, statistically, this might be the most important thing you could work on. Let's start with a few misconceptions when it comes to drawing the head. First of all, and this kind of goes for any kind of drawing, learning to draw something right does not mean you need to learn to draw it first within realism or realistically. What I mean by that is you don't necessarily need to be able to create a photorealistic version of something out of charcoal or get the lighting ever so perfect on the planes of our drawing. This can be helpful, but realism is a completely different form of drawing than what we'll be using today. This comes up a lot when I say to learn to draw things the right way first, especially when your intention is to make something stylized, simple, cartoony, or anime. It might seem especially pointless when that's your goal, and you're visualizing that Da Vinci style sketch or charcoal on an easel in front of a model. That's still valuable to do, but it's not the path we're going to take in this immediate lesson. The second misconception to go along with that is that no matter what style you intend to end up in, whether that's Pixar-esque stylization, comics, what have you, the principles here are going to be super important for you. Third and fourth, the head is not a flat rectangle. It's also not a perfectly round sphere. Because the head is both a complex shape and something we recognize really well as humans because we're looking at other people's heads and faces all the time in order to communicate, it's really important that you get this down. Like we said, instead of realism, the form of drawing we're going to use, at least for this first lesson, is constructed drawing. This is where we're using simple shapes on the two-dimensional surface of your paper or screen to create a three-dimensional shape. Now you can feel free to follow along with each video, or if your style of learning might be to watch all three levels first, then go back here to the beginning and follow along, you can do so on paper, that's fine. I just so happen to be doing this digitally because that's what I'm most comfortable with and it's easier to share with you, the audience. I'm just using this simple two-finger glove, which helps with friction on the screen of my iPad Pro here, and I just have this foam grip around my Apple Pencil just to give it a little bit more grip. There's nothing special about either of these things. You can do everything that we're doing here with pencil and paper. The shapes that are going to be the most important for us today are the cube, which is simply a square in two directions, a sphere, which is a circle in two directions, and a cylinder, which is a square from one direction and a circle from the other. If you haven't practiced these shapes before, now would be a great time to do so. You don't have to press really hard on the page or tablet as you draw, and it'd be great if you could use a pencil. These aren't final lines, they're more like the blueprint that your final drawing will end up on. Whether that's a digital pencil or a physical pencil is up to you. Not only does this give us that third dimension, it helps us to keep our proportions looking good. In other words, because we planned, things are more likely to end up where they're supposed to, including with symmetry. When it comes to the head, there's a ton of genetic and circumstantial reasons why everyone's head looks just a little bit different. There's layers of muscle, pockets of fat like in our cheeks, wrinkle or dimple lines, and hereditary traits. But one part of our heads that stays relatively unchanged from human to human is the bones underneath, or our skull. Really, our skull just goes through a change from our young baby age up into adulthood, but from person to person, it's rather similar. Here we're looking at a skull from the side and the front. Here are a couple of important things to point out. Like we said, the head is not a perfect sphere. Instead, from the back of the head to the bridge of the nose, it's a little elongated, more like an American football or rugby ball than a basketball. Now, of course, depending on the angle we're looking at, the severity of that is less apparent. From the front, you can't tell at all, and from a three-quarter view, it might look a bit more spherical in total. But keep that length of the head in mind. We can represent the main part of our head that doesn't just include the nose or jaw with this elongated sphere first. Next, notice from our front view the way that the head looks a bit square. That's because there's a plane or flat surface at a certain angle starting at about our temples. To flatten this part of our sphere, we just need to add a flat circle shape and erase the little bits this gets rid of. Already we can see the complexity of the head But the good news is that by practicing this and getting this in your mind, you're developing your visual vocabulary, and it will become another thing you can easily draw, just like a word in a sentence when you talk. We want to start adding the second big shape of our head, and to do that, we're going to make a quick measurement. It's an easy one, a vertical line right down the center of the skull. Now remember our temple plane, so this line is going to have a little corner when it hits there and plunge straight down instead of curving out. This line is really helpful because this is the back of our jaw and the place where our ear sits. If you feel on your own head now, you can see just how closely aligned the bottom of your ear and that very back part of your jaw are. This is also about the middle point of the neck as well, if we were drawing that. On the side view, let's add another line from the furthest part of our head down. This is not the very front of our jaw though. We'll talk about that in a second. Here we can also add a line to denote the eye line, which is just below the middle of our sphere shape. If we look back at the side view of the skull, there's about a 45-degree angle from the back of the head to the chin. There's another thing we'll notice from the side view if we draw a straight line down like we just did, and that's that the jaw and the nose end up further forward than the line. This means that we can't just draw the face as a flat surface. Another thing to note for later is that the sockets for the eyes are behind this line. So to simplify this extra shape on the front of the face, we're just going to add another constructed shape, a little like a mask. None of this shape is really a final anatomical piece, it's just a placeholder blueprint so that we can have the basic form. Later we can come back and carve into this like you would with clay. It's okay if your lines aren't perfectly accurate on the first try. Things can be a little messy. You can always come back and correct or erase things. Bear with me here as I'm trying to do this in front of a lot of people and trying to get it right on the first try. And also, this is a set of ideas and things that I'm thinking about when I draw, but this isn't necessarily the way that, as an experienced artist, having done this a lot of times in the past, I would necessarily progress right now. It's just the best way to learn when you're starting out. So this is a good place to give you the assignment to practice what we've made so far a few times over. Draw it from the side, draw it from the front, draw it from a few different angles. We aren't going to add facial features yet. We just want to get this building block into your visual vocabulary, and we don't want to make it any more complicated. This series will continue in level 2, which should be out in a few days instead of next week if you're watching this when it releases. I'm an artist myself. I'm currently working on an animated series pilot called Stormfellers. Make sure to check back for that. And if you'd like a comprehensive character design curriculum which includes drawing like this, check out learncharacterdesign.com. It's over 18 hours of on-demand learning. This month's Biko's Backpack on Patreon looks like this, and you can follow me at BagelDenizen on Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, and TikTok. Thank you so much for watching, and have fun creating. See you in level 2.